Alright, let's give this a minute to... Looks like our bitrate's fine. And no dropping frames. And we've been up 10 seconds. And we got about a 10-second stream delay. Fantastic. Twitch is good. Alright, welcome everybody. I can't believe it's that time again, that we're almost done. Today is part 3 of Tale of the Heike. If you're a student, you've somehow missed the other parts. They're both on Twitch or on my YouTube channel, which is available from the Discord announcement page or from the bottom of my Twitch. You can just click on the picture of that Greek-looking guy, and it'll take you right to a video from the page. Then you just click on the user. So if you're, I think the first one might not be on there. So today we're going to finish Tale of the Heike. We're going to, chapter 5, we'll do a bit of. And then we're going to blow through the rest of the book. I mean, we're going to focus on some of the better or more famous chapters, and then get to the end, the final scene. And then, end of the class, we'll talk a bit more about methodology, and I'll answer any questions about how you might analyze this. Especially using kind of like a Buddhist framework, which is very prevalent in this book. So we'll be getting into that. Let's see. And somebody's late. It's okay, I'll get you. Yeah. So just poke me in the class if you're the late person. That's totally fine. All right, everybody. So today, let's jump on in. We're going to finish Tale of the Heike, especially for those of you working on work who didn't finish it. Oh, that's a nice picture. Man, I forget how good at pictures I pick sometimes. For those of you who did not yet do this, or did not yet read this, I highly recommend reading at least the prestigious parts of this book. It's a great book. Like, there's never... It might be one of the, like, the back of our version literally compares it to the Iliad, right? Where is this? Yeah, it's the 14th century Japanese Iliad, as he says it. I can't fight him. Seems like the right answer, right? It's definitely an epic. So, it's worth reading. I mean, if you bought it, for sure. Like, you know, if you don't finish it this semester, you should read a lot. You should read most of it. But it's a great summer reading. I mean, even... people always complain about old books and women characters, and both of the books we've read for Japan actually have great women characters, and actually the whole end of the book has an extra bonus chapter, 3 chapters called the Initiates book, and it's how the mom of the emperor becomes a bodhisattva, or at least she transcends to the Pure Land. So it's very Buddhist paradise for the people who have no idea what I'm talking about. So it's great. Like, I'd highly recommend reading it. So let's jump on in. We're going to jump in from chapter 5. And we're going to get all the way to the end today. And let me get my book notes. So, 6, 5. I can't believe how many pages I read today. Literally all day I was reading from 5 to 11. So, I mean, not the time, chapters. All right, so let's jump in. And I also have my picture folder. Where'd you go, picture folder? Here we go. Yeah. Okay. So, we now get, if you don't remember the last slide, the Heike burned a temple. Another one. And the previous burnings might not have been on purpose, but the last burning was definitely intentional. So then, Kiamori, Taira Kiamori, doing what he does, he decides he wants to move the capital completely to a totally different location, which is called Fukuhara. Now, the original capital is Kyoto, and if you have your books, I really should have taken a picture of this now that I think about it. But if you look at your books in, what is this, 729... Oh, wait, no, is that the wrong map? That might be the wrong map. I'm trying to find the local area map. Oh, yeah, no, 728 has the map it calls Central Honshu map. So Fukuhara is way far away from what it says the capital is. So it's called the Seto Naikai, which is the Japanese inland sea. So they built a completely new place for the capital. And now, if you didn't know already, you'd figure it out now, that every freaking thing in this story, all the houses are wood. It's one reason whenever you hear a flashback, they refer to homes being... My brain's breaking, give me a second. Oh, yeah, if a home's not maintained, it gets overgrown quite quickly by nature. Japan is subtropical, right? Like, it's right above the tropics, but it's very well rained, so the wildlife can grow like the weeds are powerful, let's just say that. So all the homes are wood. So literally, the Kiamori forces the whole capital to literally pick up their homes, deconstruct their homes from the capital, and move 100 miles away to a new capital on the coast. And it's super chaotic. If you did not read this chapter, amazing amounts of chaos. These people can barely keep their lives together. And it's not strictly speaking a consenting move, right? It's definitely a crazy move. And not, of course, not everybody moves, but a vast majority of the nobility and the elites have to move. And then they spend a whole part of the chapter just talking about all the precedents for when they've moved capital before. I think it's also the second one. No, that's this one. So because again, this book is it's not just a moral epic, but it's a historical epic. So they talk about kind of the reasoning, and then you get kind of how do people feel about these abandoned palaces. For example, on 256, there's a poem here that somebody wrote on an abandoned palace pillar. No fewer by now than 4 times 100 years have passed since the days that saw this city's founding. Must it now fall to ruin? Farewell to flowers blossoming in Miyako, and off on the wind we blow to Fukuhara, our eyes out for peril ahead. So there's these ideas that, okay, this might not be a good idea, but he's so powerful, nobody can stop Kiamori. He does whatever he wants. Then we get moon viewing. This one's almost a random chapter. I'm not going to say it's random, but it shows people trying to figure out new moon viewing locations in the new capital. And again, it just reminds people how much they miss the old capital. I mean, it gets them to sing sad songs like, the ancient capital I return to see, spreading wasteland of weeds and desolation. The moon shining in the sky reveals all below. Only the autumn wind and blows piercingly chill. That's by a guy called Lord Sanaseda, who returned and visited with one of the empresses who didn't leave. And you suddenly get this. Which one's what on? The first set of poems I read was on 256, and the second set was on 260, for the person who asked the question in the chat. And they're all correlating to these chapters, right? The sub-chapters, right? Book 5, section 1, Book 5, section 2. So these are all within like 4 pages. Fukuhara is near modern-day Kobe. Actually, it is modern-day Kobe. Kobe/Akashi. So that's why, again, having the book for maps. I took a picture of almost everything except for the map. I thought, like, oh, everybody has the map. So on 728, if you have the book, it shows Fukuhara. It's between where it's called the capital and Awaji, which is a big island in the Japanese Sea. But yeah, it's modern-day Kobe, basically. Literally, if you look next to it, there's a place called Mikage Woods where they went earlier. I actually stayed in Mikage for a couple weeks. It has no woods anymore, by the way. It's just a nice neighborhood. But yeah, it's Kobe, for sure. All right. Now, Spirit Mischief. This one we actually get a cool picture, too, if you have your book. Hold on. And again, like last week, I love these pictures so much I had to bring them with me. So, and this one, actually, Spirit Mischief, is the front page of the Penguin Classic books. So if you have your Penguin Classic books, this is there too. Now, what is Spirit Mischief? This shows that basically the spirits are pissed off with Kiamori, and he has several nightmares, or it actually doesn't even say they're nightmares, all of them. Several of them are like waking incidents. So for example, this one where you see the face here, literally it shows, there was also a morning when Lord Kiamori stepped from his curtained bed and threw open the double doors, only to see, oh, this is the skull one. Heaped in the inner courtyard garden, dead man's skulls beyond counting, rolling and churning, up and down, in and out, rattling against one another with a huge clatter. And he just said, "Attendant, attendant," he called, but no one appeared, no one came. Meanwhile, the skulls clumped into a great mound, bursting the bounds of the garden, some 150 feet high, a mountain of skulls, now suddenly crammed with living eyes, all of them training on Lord Kiamori's unblinking glare. And this is the most Kiamori part, which you can see here. Kiamori glared back, unperturbed under his gaze. They disappeared without a trace, like a frost dew burning in the sun. And this one too, there's another one where just a face showed up to him. And of course, it's Lord Kiamori, so what did he do? He stared it down. That's what he did. He just looked at it and said, "Get out of here." And the thing literally left. That's just Lord Kiamori. But again, why are we hearing these stories? These incidences show that the supernatural is pissed at him. I mean, there's another weird one where like a horse gets some mice in its tail, and then his wife, where was this? I'm reading this now. All right, right under the picture. So another line. So one man had a weird dream where the Heike gods got kicked out of the pantheon. His wife had a weird dream too, which got her in trouble. And then we get this quote. So the gods reveal themselves in all sorts of tactful forms, now a layman, now a woman. They certainly call Ikutsushima deity female, but a divine being possessed of all 3 wisdoms and 6 superpowers can appear as a layman without any trouble at all. So suddenly now, we're getting the spirit mischief before the real bad stuff happens. So it's kind of this hint that, hey, things are going to get worse if you keep doing horrible things. By the way, one of the horrible things, moving the capital, for no reason. Alright, now we'll keep moving through this chapter. It's not all equally important. So now we start getting courtiers of, this guy shows up and announces, hey, finally, we're getting a rebellion. What rebellion? Well, the most important one is Yoritomo, so the Minamoto, or also known as the Genji. The Genji start rebelling. And what happens now? Well, we now get like this book often does, right? We get the warning, we have an uprising coming, and then we get the backstory. So this one is a backstory of Japanese rebels. So everybody, all the famous rebels against the Emperor. 266 has a list. I'm not going to read the list, it's only 2 pages. And then we get another one, and again, this shows you how the medieval/classical Japan thought. You then get the list of Chinese rebels. So the Xinjiang Palace, the beginning just says, examples of failed resistance to the sovereign occur in China as well. And it gives a bunch of Chinese examples. Where again, right, we have this amazing Chinese story of a rebel and filial piety and a nice old romp, right? So this shows you kind of their logic chain. And if you notice, right, things are not always purely linear, right? Because this is our linear events here, right? We're all in linear time, then suddenly we have historical flashback 1, Chinese flashback 2. This is a very common format. And again, we're starting to see there's an uprising now against against the Heike, and is it moral or not? That's what this is all dealing with, basically. And why do I have the cherry blossom picture? Maybe because things fade away. Maybe because it shows you what a wood building looks like if you've never seen one. All right. And as we go, any questions, feel free to type them as we go. Make sure my cursor works. Hold on. There we go. Good. But yeah, so far this one's pretty basic. Now we start getting the more depressing stuff on this page. And we get more fun pictures. We get Mongaku's Mighty Austerities. Oh my goodness, if you did not read Mongaku's Mighty Austerities, what are you doing with your life? And as normal, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them as we go. Oh man, I gotta rotate it. Nope. Nope. Yeah. Okay, great. And the question. Yes, well, we should care about this rebellion because it's the beginning of the counter of this story. So the most recent one is the Genji. So now the Genji are rebelling. That is what we get. So Yoritomo is... So if you read number 4, the Courier, they say in this past 8 month, on the 17th, Yoritomo, in Izu exile once of the Right Gate Watch, has started an uprising, basically. And he started defeating the Heike all across the empire. So we're now getting a real rebellion by the only people who can fight them. So now you gotta know the Genji are coming. And so we get these flashbacks to tell us about the Genji coming. Or more correctly, explaining, like, what's the precedence of previous... This one here. So these ones give us the precedence of previous Japanese uprisings and then Chinese uprisings. The Japanese one's generally failures, but the Chinese one is a little bit more interesting. It's longer, too. And it actually talks about, like, successful filial piety as well. But in the end, failed assassinations, which is interesting. So, but then we get to wonder, is this going to be a failed uprising? You'll see. All right. So now we start to get another interesting side character. And this is, again, going back to how our story format works, right? We tend to get current time, past time. Now again, we're back to near current time. We get to learn about a guy called Mongaku. And Mongaku's a monk. Now, if you don't know anything about them, you just got to read this chapter title. And some of these chapter titles are very obscure. Right? They don't always seem very relevant. And then sometimes they're super clear, like this one, right? Mongaku's Mighty Austerities. If you don't know what Mighty Austerities are, you're about to find out. All right. And literally the beginning of this one is, now to speak of Minamoto no Yoritomo, in the 12th month of Heiji, his father rebelled, and that's in 1159. And that 14th, and in the next year, 1160, Yoritomo got banished for 20 years. So we now get a little of Yoritomo's backstory. So the Minamoto are the Genji, just to remind you. Same difference. Oh, so Mongaku is literally his name. It's his monk name. So in this case, Mongaku is a monk. So this is the monk's name. But this is where we're starting to get the Genji backstory, and aka the Minamoto. So Minamoto is always the Genji from now on, if you're curious. So whenever you see a Minamoto or hear of a Minamoto, it's a Genji. It's just like the Taira and the Heike. So again, just like we talked about in Pillow Book, Japanese classical names always had multiple ways to say just the normal name, and it's before we got to like their titles or any other affiliation. We could geographic affiliation. So for example, as we go forward or as you read it for next week, you'll notice a lot of time they'll talk about the Nantoka, like something Genji, or the something Heike. That's telling you their province localization, like the Aji, like the Awaji Genji. It's like the Genji from Awaji. Oh, okay. And if you don't know where the provinces are, this is one reason you buy the book. On 722, it has all the classic provinces. Now, why would I say all the classic provinces? Because these provinces do not correlate to modern states necessarily. A lot of them do not. I'm trying to see if there's any here that I even think do. A couple do. But mostly, there's basically a new state system that the modern Japanese government put on top of this province map. But until 1868, this map is the accurate province map of Japan, if you're curious. So that's when they use geography. So if it doesn't always match nowadays, you can just Google search it. It's pretty easy. All right, so the subscription list. Oh, sorry, we can't skip Mongaku. What am I doing? Okay, so Mighty Austerities. What is this? Well, if you look at your book, and it's actually on this one, the 274, you get the picture. So Mongaku is the guy who became a monk. And why do we care about him? It says right here, Yoritomo was exiled, and he eventually raised rebellion. Why? This is on 727, or 272. Because they say, the holy man Mongaku of Takao urged him to do so. This Mongaku's father is a famous man. So Mongaku is actually the guy who got Yoritomo to rebel. Let's find out how that happened. But first we learn about Mongaku's character. What does this mean? Well, Mongaku became a monk, and he wanted to know how hard aesthetic practices were. So the first thing he did, this is funny, under the blazing 6-month sun, so June, without breath of air stirring, he entered a hillside thicket and lay down on his back. Noxious insects, horseflies, mosquitoes, wasps, ants, and so on, bit and stung him. He never moved, nor rose again for 7 days. It's in the middle of an Asian summer, folks. It's like the South for America. It's pretty intense. And then on the 8th day, he got up and said, "So, is that what aesthetic practice amounts to?" And then this is the best part. Came the answer, if that's what it took, no one would ever survive it. So the universe is already talking to this guy. I love it. He says, fine, no problem then, and went off to practice in earnest. It wasn't hardcore enough for him to get attacked by bugs for a week. He needed something more hardcore. So he did Kumano, and he's meaning to undertake a retreat in something called the Nachi Waterfall, which is this one. First, though, he decided to see what was standing under the famous waterfall was like. He went straight there. And this was in the 10th of the 12th month, so the 10th of December. In the middle of winter, he goes under this waterfall. And he promises to do it for 3 weeks. And he chants basically a secret. It's called a Danani, which is a secret Buddhist spell, basically. And he's like, I'll chant it for 3 weeks. And he literally gets basically killed by the waterfall several times. And then the Lord he's praying to, one of the Bodhisattva, he gets saved by these two folks over here. He gets saved. Ooh. Looks like we're 0 again. Give it a second. Give it a second. Give it a second. Alright, looks like we're back. Yep, super stream poof. Super stream poof. And still laggy, give it a second. It looks like we're back though. That's nice. Alright, I don't know why it's red though. That's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. How can my bitrate be that bad? Let's see. We'll give it a second. Welcome to technology, folks. Sometimes it decides to kill itself. Alright, looks like we're back. Alright, great. Wow, we dropped a lot of frames. I will have to re-upload. Oop. Let's see if we're still dropping. Looks like we're doing fine. I'll give you guys a couple seconds. Sometimes it does kill itself. Oh, we're dropping frames still. Okay. That was very weird. Super leggy today. I guess that does happen. Great. Yeah, well, I don't have to refresh, but you guys probably should. All right. I want to make sure nothing's downloading. Give me a second. Let's close all the background stuff. Give me 30 seconds, folks. And we'll pause. Yes. All right. Great. And looks like we fixed it. Okay. Great. It's probably just the internet, but you never know. So I closed a couple things, which should clear up my... Here we go. Every unnecessary thing is gone. Fantastic. All right, let's keep going. So, okay, if you missed any of this, it's fine, but all you got to know, we're back to the waterfall, right? This guy jumps under the waterfall. He's a monk trying to, like, learn austerities. He jumps underneath this thing and gets crushed by it multiple times. And then he eventually gets saved by the Bodhisattva he's praying to. And he says, I have made a most solemn vow to stand thrice 7 days beneath this waterfall, chanting 300,000 times this prayer to the Lord Fudo. And it's only the 5th day. Who was I to know has the gall to carry me here before the 7th day is over? So he gets saved once, jumps in again, basically gets crushed to death again, and then he gets saved by these two little God's helpers, basically. They're like mini Bodhisattvas. And then he gets saved, and this kind of starts him on his mission. And he keeps doing pilgrimages, basically. And to end this part of the chapter, it's hilarious. Here we go. It says, perhaps longing for all for home, he then went up to the capital, famed as an ascetic so fierce, he could pray birds down from the sky. So the part we need to know about this experience, he's a very, like, holy man. He's very much reverential, very holy, and he does very intimidating physical austerities. And this is how he gets his reputation. And then, this is fun. Number 8, let me open my list again. So keep this guy in your head, right? So now, nope, and yep. All right. So now we get something called the subscription list. You're like, what the heck is this? Well, Mongaku decides, this is literally the next chapter's beginning. Thereafter, Mongaku pursues his practice in peace, and in the inner fastness of a mountain called Takao. And there on Takao, he goes to an old abandoned temple that's like 500 years old. And he's like, I'm going to refound this temple. Yeah, somebody made a point that I am competing with all the other streamers, so it could just be Twitch sucking. That's true, for sure. Yeah, no, it's probably me, folks, if it crashes like that, or it's Twitch, let's be honest. But anyway, so Mongaku now is I'm gonna make a temple. And he decides to make a subscription list and go ask people for money to found his temple, because he's a monk, right? Buddhist monks can't handle money, so he has to go find money. So what does he do? Well, he decides, obviously, if I want to build a temple, I'm going to go to the richest guy. So he goes straight to cloistered Emperor Go-Shirakawa. Goes right up to his palace and asks to see him. And the attendant says, no, he's not going to see you right now. And Mongaku's like, of course, anybody would see me. I am a revered monk. So he barges his way in the middle of a music performance. And on, this is 276, 277, he just bleats out his whole proposal. for money. And I'll give you a little bit of it because it has a lot of actually good Buddhology in here if you're curious about, like, what is Buddhism like? Let me read it. He reads it out with a great voice, so I guess I'm good at this part. I, Mongaku, disciple of the Buddha, humbly declare the following purpose, with assistance from the greatest lords and the least of the people, from both clerics and laymen, to build a temple on the sacred ground of Mount Takao, and to conduct services there for the benefit of the life and the life to come. Hear then my appeal for this assistance. Reflection reveals true reality to be vast. Sentient beings in the Buddha go by different provisional names, yet dark clouds of delusion mass to obscure the dharmic nature, swathing peaks of the 12-fold chain of causation, dimming the radiance of the moon that shines for all time in the lotus blossom of the heart, and preventing the three virtues and the four mandalas from appearing in lofty heavens. This is deplorable. The sun of the Buddha has set. The realm of transmigration from birth to birth and death to death is shrouded in darkness. We lose ourselves in lust and wine. Who can put away from himself the folly of the mad elephant or the leaping ape? We foolishly speak ill of others and the teaching. How, then, are we to escape attack from the vengeful fiends of the king of hell? Though I have cleansed myself in the dust of profane world, and clothed myself in monastic robes, evil leanings still mount me day and night. Morning and evening my ears remain deaf to their better promptings. It is suffering to return to the fiery pit of the three realms, and forever to turn in agony on the wheel of the four births. Therefore each scroll of the Buddha's peerless teaching, vast as these scrolls all are number, expound the path towards Buddhahood. Not one, whether teaching tactful means, or directly, highest truth fails to guide towards the far shore. So it is that I weep before the spectacle of transience, and that I urge all high and low, clerics and laymen, to bend their steps towards the supreme lotus throne, and to build a sanctuary for the king of boundless awakening. And then he explains why to pick his place. So this guy rushes into the emperor, right, the retired emperor's house, and then... what happens? Oh man, I love this guy so much. We get Mongaku's exile. Surprise! Why? Because there's a concert going on with a bunch of hoity-toity nobles, and literally the quote from one of them is this: "What is this gobbledygook? Get him out of here!" And then one of the retainers runs up and tries to slap this monk, and the monk ippons him. He flips him over and throws him. And the guy runs away like a coward. Next, another guy, a warrior then has to come in and wrestle this monk to the ground. They then arrest him and put him in exile because he's just such a handful. And even when they're trying to get rid of him, he's like, "So you refuse to contribute? Fine, but just you wait for what you have done to Mongaku. That same Mongaku will see to it you rue the day." Because, I mean, you're beating up a monk who's just asking for money. But this guy is very eclectic. So he gets exiled. Now, interestingly, where does he get exiled to? He gets exiled to the same place that the Yoritomo is exiled in. And so they give him to a care of somebody. He gets exiled. Interesting. And he meets Yoritomo. So, oh, that's my phone. So he meets Yoritomo, and when they meet, this is 282. They talk about Shigemori, actually, the only son of Kiamori who was a good guy, and they mention how he was the genuine good person. And then, basically, he gets an order from this monk where he tells him, "To my eyes, no Heike or Genji currently has your promise. As a leader of men, lose no more time then, raise rebellion, and take command of this land of Japan." Yoritomo replied, "That, Reverend, was not a thought I have ever entertained. Now that I owe my trivial life to Lady Ike's words on my behalf, I pray to her daily chanting the essence of the Lotus Sutra as my sole occupation. Mongaku," the monk again, insists, "there is a book where it is written, who refuses heaven's offers, the same shall incur heaven's blame. Failure to act, when the time comes, invite nothing but disaster." So basically, Yoritomo keeps arguing with him and eventually decides, and the monk, this is the best part, the monk whips out a necklace that is Yoritomo's killed dad. Yoritomo's dad was a rebel, by the way. his dead dad's skull on a necklace, and he's like, "I've been praying for your dead dad for 10 years." And he's like, okay, if you get the retired emperor's permission, I'll do it. So Mongaku, he's in exile. He's not allowed to go back. He goes all the way back to the capital, finds a sympathetic noble to go to the retired emperor, gets permission, brings the permission back, and then the Genji have started their rebellion. It's so amazing. I love this book. And then we get our first battle, the Fuji River, 511. Do I have my picture for this, actually? Hold on. I do. Yeah. All right. So we're going to talk about the disaster at the Fuji River. Why is this a disaster? Well, because the Genji raised rebellion, and if you have your map, this is near Tokyo. So if you look at your book, let's see, this is 722, and I'll show some pictures after the break. I'll take pictures of my phone after the break. But so Musashi Sagami Izu, this is Western Japan in a place called Kamakura, which in this old time wasn't worth much, but now is a place called Tokyo. But this is the Heike's land, or the Genji's land. The Genji start marching towards the capital, and there's a battle because the Heike are confident they can beat the Genji, so they send a big army out. But then we get the disaster of Fuji River. What happens? Basically, the Genji gets super psyched. The Heike get super psyched by the Genji and scare themselves so much they jump into the river and drown their whole army and run away. Because they basically get scared at night by some birds and some villagers. It's amazing. So the first battle does not go the Heike's way, and this is kind of the showing you the beginning of the end, right? So, and this is literally Mount Fuji. See here at the top, right? So it's the river of Fuji that's going down towards the coast. There's a big battle, but actually the only battle is the Heike army manages to drown itself, which is not good if you're a Heike guy. All right. And then we get the Gosset Dancers. Now, this one, what does this one matter? Basically, we learn both the aftermath of the battle, which is miserable. How miserable? These are some of the poems that come out, and they're explained in the story a little bit. Let me give you a couple. Poor, low, one-floor house. What disrepair must agitate the ridgepole warden, since the post he counted on to prop him up has come down. And one-floor house is a Japanese joke. That means Taira, and then they're making fun of both the main leaders' names. Another one, frothing over rocks, the Fuji River waters still run less nimbly than those Taira warriors running for their lives. These are just like street poetry that they use to diss the Taira. It's very funny. There's another lampoon that made fun of a very specific guy. But again, this is hilarious. So why is this called the Gosset Dancers? Basically, the place they moved the new capital to is so hastily constructed and so badly done, they don't have any of the ritual sites to do any of their normal calendar. And again, this is one reason we read the Pillow Book. You got that impression how important the calendar was, right? And this is where we learned what the Gosset dances are. They literally couldn't do any of the imperial calendar, any of the liturgical calendar, because the new capital was so bad. So they had to skip all the ritual or do it in Kyoto. So what ended up happening? They literally had to return to the old capital. After like a year, they ripped down their new capital and moved back to the old capital. So this is demonstrating the Heike aren't having a good time. So they already had to move capital twice. Think about how expensive that is to force everybody to move twice. And basically, Kyoto was half deserted at this point. So they destroyed a city once, built a new city that sucked, then moved back to the city they just destroyed. Could it get any worse? It could. 514, the burning of Nara. You're like, what do you mean, Professor? They send an army to put down the monks that earlier we talked about who rebelled to support one of the princes, right? The Heike now send an army, and they fight the monks, they beat the monks, but then when they beat the monks, they happen to burn down both the major temples. So, this is Todaiji and Kofukuji, and this is one of them. This is Todaiji, if you're curious. My picture, by the way. This is modern Todaiji. So they burned this temple to the ground, and this was the one with the big Buddha in it. This is actually the picture of it. Look here, it's in the book. Literally, they burn all the temples, especially the two major temples. And if you don't remember, these two temples are literally the Imperial Temple and the Fujiwara Temple. So they burn the two temples that are for the biggest two families, with monks and women and children inside. And by the way, these aren't warrior monks. These are almost all exclusively scholarly monks and regular women and children. And this is the burning of the great Buddha of Todaiji. Very depressing. So all of these priceless lyrics get destroyed by Heike. So the Heike army burns the capital to the ground, or the old capital, especially the royal places. I mean, the religious places. So if we're a Buddhist methodology, right? How do you think it helps your karma for literally burning, down the old capital? So this, in a Buddhist methodology, right? This is a bad karmic option. It's like, you hit two of the biggest temples. And the blame it was one of the lieutenant's idea, but once it started, right, it kept going, and this will come back to bite the Heike in the butt. Not a great place for the Heike to be. But here we are, another point for a question. From now on, we're going to speed up much more speedily, aka I'm skipping lots of parts of the chapter because I feel like it, to get to the big points. But any questions so far? Except for the fact, why would you burn it? Vengeance, because they were mad these monks raised up against them. But does that give you right to murder? I think it was 3,500 people. So 3,500 people get killed in fire. It's an intentional fire, not an accidental fire. So this is definitely prefacing what the next chapters will bring. And they always have good end quotes here. Let me find. Here we go. Yeah, they mentioned that this is, whenever you get a prediction, this is how you know it's going to end bad. The very last page of this chapter, 304, the Emperor Shomu had written in his own hand, quote, "As long as my temple flourishes, so shall the realm in equal measure. Should my temple fall into decline, so too will the realm," quote unquote. Sure enough, the realm's decline was quite obvious. So this terrible year ended, and the 5th year of Jisho began, which was 1181. And, bad signs are, bad things that are changing, and not in a good way. Alright. Not all the pictures, by the way, will line up exactly with the events, but we're starting to get some of these medieval battle pictures. This, again, obviously I didn't paint this, right? This is a picture from a retelling of the Genji, where we're starting to get these kind of warrior photos from the Tokugawa era, but they're still fun to have. So what's our first big event that happens in Book 6? Well, the death of the retired emperor. You're like, hey, Go Shirakawa finally died. No, it's more sad than that for poor Go Shirakawa. This is his son dies. But what happens? Well, we start to learn this is a bad year. So Nara, destroyed by the fire, put a stop to any mourning salutation. The majesty went nowhere. All the Fujiwara also didn't do anything because their temple also burned. They're in mourning. We have a quote, a song from Cloistered Eminence Go Shirakawa here, where he says, "Fidelity to the 10 precepts won me supreme command beyond price. The 4 emperors after me have been my sons and grandsons. How then can it be possible so to rob me of authority as to make my life meaningless?" So he's not enjoying his life. But then it gets worse. So we get to hear about the other retired emperor Takakura. He was the 22-year-old. Or now he's only 21. And what happens? Well, this whole situation hurt him specifically. And he even went on a pilgrimage to try to save the realm and pray for peace. But what happened? Didn't work. And they mentioned that, like, not just the stress, but also moving to the coast hurt his constitution, and he died. And they give a little, celebration for him on 308. They say, "Retired Emperor Takakura passed away. 12 years he reigned, his government replete with virtue, giving new life to benevolence and righteousness, long forgotten but sagely enjoyed in the songs and the book of history, restoring the people to peace and ease. Not even an arhat who has achieved the triple wisdom and the 6-fold powers escapes the end that awaits us all. Nor does the manifest avatar master every transformation. Yet, ineluctable transcendence still seemed excessive in its zeal. the night they moved him without delay to the foothills, and there, like evening smoke, he rose heavenward, as do spring mists. Well, if you've never seen, imagine a windy, gusty coast with walls made out of paper and wood. Right? A constant winter breeze isn't very great in a wood house. Let's just say it that way. Okay, if you don't know this is very interesting. Coasts were vastly unpopular until the 20th century. Everywhere in the world. Do you know why? Pirates. I'm not even kidding. Coasts are dangerous, right? You can't defend a coast. You can't stop. Like, literally the world still had pirates until 1910, folks. Like, if you ever heard of Teddy Roosevelt and the Marines going to Tripoli, it's basically he was killing the last pirates in North Africa. Most humans did not live on coasts. Coasts were considered a crappy place because you could get pirated. So moving to the coast was both bad weather and a bad idea. We are like the first generation where moving to a coast seemed like a good idea. Or, let's see, if it's been since the 1920s... No, it's been 100 years. So for 100 years, people have moved to the coasts, but it's not a normal human condition. So the retired emperor dies, and this is just not another bad omen, right? So here we keep going. Now we're going to skip ahead a bit. We have another death in Book 6. Lots of deaths. Our seminal character dies. I'm sure you're shocked if you didn't read it. But Lord Kiamori dies. How does Kiamori die? He literally gets the worst fever ever. And not only does this happen, but they're trying to send out another force to deal with the rebels. Desperately. The Heike have had no success, and all of a sudden Kiamori gets sick. Now, what do they explain? On the 27th, on the day that Lord Munemori was due to set forth on his punitive campaign against the Genji in the east, he was delayed of his departure because Lord Kiamori was unwell. The next day, on the 28th, Lord Kiamori's condition was grave. This is it then, people whispered. From the very first day of his illness, nothing passed his lips, not even water. His body burned like fire. Heat within 25 or 30 feet where he lay was unbearable. His only words were hot, hot. This was clearly no common affliction. And they tried to put him, for example, in holy water. He boiled the water away. That's what they say about him. They tried to spray water on him from bamboo pipe. The water literally recoiled from his body like a stone or hot iron and never reached him. So they have no idea what happened. And then people have bad dreams about it, and they're like, oh. His wife, too, has a terrifying dream where she basically sees the death gods have come to take him to hell. And then, because he's the most powerful man in the country, right, they're like, let's pray for him. And this is the best part. They ask him what he wants. Because he's dying, right? And he says this. So, I subdued repeated uprisings against the court, received rewards beyond my station, enjoyed the great good fortune of becoming chancellor to the emperor's grandfather. My children and grandchildren prosper. In this life I have no further ambition. But there's one thing I still desire. I cannot rest, because I have not yet seen the head of the Izu exile, Yoritomo, who is the Genji leader. So, and he says, never mind building me temples or pagodas. Never mind pious prayers for me once I am gone. No, I want Yoritomo's head off and hung before my grave. That is my only commemoration I wish. And the next line, the commentary of the author, what profoundly sinful words. So he doesn't want salvation. He doesn't want people to pray for him. He doesn't want consolation. He wants his enemy's head on a pike. And somebody mentions, what kind of sickness is this? This is the karmic sickness, right? Did he probably die of something like this? Sure. But, like, what are they saying Buddhist-wise, right? This is definitely, he's getting his comeuppance for all his agony. And they mentioned he finally died writhed in agony, gasping for breath, finally died in convulsions. And he died in his 64th year, not yet time to die of old age. But once his destined span was over, nothing could save him. And then they have a whole page. This is 328. They explain to him that all his army couldn't save him, And then what happens to him now? They mention, oh, here we go. To the great mountain at Death's Gate, whence none return, to the river, the dead cross, over the 3 fords to the Yellow Springs. He set out, without doubt, all alone. Only his many crimes, new and old, came forth to meet him as hell fiends. There's good reason to pity him. In any case, there was more to do. So, not looking good for old Kiamori's immortal soul, let's be honest here. So, right in the middle of our story, this is book 6 of 12, Kiamori bites the bullet. He dies of a plague. Doesn't die in battle, doesn't die lost or winning. He dies of the death with his enemies still alive. Welcome to the time. Alright. Now we start to get some of our fun battles. Do I have any more pictures? I feel like I have another picture here. Hold on. Nope, no pictures for this chapter. That's fine. Alright, so now we start to get some real battle descriptions. So if you remembered the last book or 2 books ago, and you're like, man, I was missing some good battles. Well, this book will not disappoint. So 6:12, the end of the chapter, we get our next battle. Let's see if there's anything I care about this. Yeah, they actually think that the Heike get worried the monks are going to start to fight them. And then we have a real battle here. Let's see. It's a pretty short one, actually. It's only 2 pages. But again, it's a defeat. We start to have battles where the Heike start to get beat. And this is our first one. So welcome to the Heike destruction. It's coming fast. All right. So from 6:12, the Heike start losing major battles. This is the part that matters. I swear it says. Nope, it doesn't. So the battle beside Yoka River, we start losing members of the family. Who do we lose in this one? Let's see. And they mention now too, with the rising of the Genji, people stop ignoring. Imperial edicts start getting ignored. We have this here: the monks of Nara and Mount Heie, of Kumano and Kipsusen, the priests Heinlo in the shrines of Ise, everyone rejected the Heike to share fortunes of the Genji. Down came the imperial edicts in all directions, and every province got its retired emperor's decree. But everyone, as a matter of course, assumed that these decrees and edicts came in reality from the Heike. They ignored every single one. So at the end of 6, for the first time in our story, we get the actual breakdown of imperial power. AKA, people now are ignoring the emperor. Why? Because they know it's just a Heike ploy. So, and not just the Genji, all the shrines, all the provinces, people are doing their own thing now. And I'll be honest with you, right? From this breakdown in 612, or basically from the 1180s, we get one more peak about 80 years later, where the Japanese fight and beat the Mongolians. If you've ever heard of the Kamikaze, which is the wind sunk the Mongolians, that wasn't the first Mongolian fleet. That was one of the subsequent invasion fleets. The Japanese actually beat the Mongolians a couple times. And that defeat of the Mongolians was the last hurrah, and basically for 600 years, imperial power is basically destroyed. And this is kind of the beginning of that, the fall of the emperor as the power source. And by the end of this, we're going to see some death. So, alright. So now, how bad does it get for the Heike? Well, by book 7, the Genji are at the gates of Kyoto again, and they're about to take the capital. And there's a battle, and they're defeated, and we get a lot of drama here, which is quite interesting. Now, interestingly enough, if you read this, it shows that the Genji are very respectful of religious authority, all authority, actually. Like, Yoritomo wouldn't even rebel until he had official permission from the emperor. And then, for example, here, Mount Heie, and again, if you've never looked at your map, which map will this be? Oh, here we go, regional map. Oh, is it not on here? Wait a minute. Why is it on one and not the other? Literally, it was on here earlier. I'll have to look for it. So, but Mount Heie is a big base that basically protects the capital. And there's 3,000 monks again. And if you remember, it's already burned down once. But it's back, don't worry. So, Mount Hei basically is having... Oh, it's Enrakuji, yeah. So if you look at 727, and it has... the capital is a big box on the Kano River. If you go west towards Lake Biwa, there's a whole area with the Enraku Shrine, which is Mount Hei. So they're coming in from the north, and they have to basically ask monks for permission to get in. Now, they could just fight the monks. They've basically beat the Heike for the capital. But they have a little conference on 374 where they're like, what should we do? And they're like, let's write a really respectful letter. And if you look, they basically do a long, I'll read a bit of this too, they do a long Confucian Buddhist hybrid of what's wrong with the Heike. And they know that not all the monks are Genji monks, right? They're from every affiliation. So they're trying to at least get them to be neutral. So this is to give you an example, if you're curious of how these kind of petitions work. And you can read the rest yourself. It's 3 pages long, I think. Due reflection on the evil deeds of the Heike suggest that ever since Hoan and Heiji, they have failed to uphold the conduct suspected of His Majesty's subjects. Nevertheless, high and low, before them with folded hands, while clerics and laymen alike prostrate themselves at their feet. They enthrone and dethrone emperors at will. They approximate provinces and countries until gorged with their spoils. They confiscate the wealth of great houses, oblivious to justice or injustice, heedless of guilt or innocence. They punish ministers and senior nobles, purloin their property, which they then pass to their followers and assume possessions of their states, which they distribute as they please among their children and grandchildren. In the 11th month of Jisho 3, they even confined the cloistered emperor to a palace, and exiled the regent to a remote region in the west. The people said nothing. They were merely exchanged glances as they passed one another on the road. That is not all. And they talk about how he killed the emperor Mochihito and burned down temples. And at this point, they've burned down Midera and Nara. And they also talk about the Genji and their plans. And then they basically ask, this is what they're asking for. My passage into the city will take me below Mount Hei. One aspect of this route concerns me. Do the sympathies of the Tendai monks lie with Heike or Genji? Should they support the traitors, I will be obliged to fight them, and destruction of Enrakuji will swiftly follow. So they basically ask the monks for permission to pass, and they make a petition based on ethics, why they should be let in. What do the monks say? We'll stand. They actually fight about it. There's Heike and Genji and other monks here, pro-Heike, pro-Genji monks. They basically they actually agree. Here we go. The answer is, now the position of Mount Hei, northeast Imperial City, inspires Enrakuji's devout prayers for peace in the realm, a realm so long troubled by Heike crimes that it knows no peace at all. AKA, we won't fight you, and we won't fight for you or against you. We'll offer prayers for you. And that's the win. Right? 3,000 monks didn't just appear and invade. By the way, the Heike also appeal. They get rejected. But you can look at the appeal. It's the next chapter over. What is this one? 712 is the appeal from them. Now the emperor flees from the capital. Now, if you don't remember, I'm skipping some of these. The emperor flees, and then all of the Heike flee. Now, why? Well, I mean, the emperor is literally a Heike, right? So all the Heike leave. Now, if you notice, from this period forward, when they flee, something happens. They do not bring their families with them. This is the same thing we see with Three Kingdoms. Now, again, this is pointing out kind of a dynamic of war, but also reality, right? You can't flee with your family, right? If most of the Japanese this time are horse soldiers, nobody has that many horses to flee with your family and your retainers. So when you lose, you leave your family behind. And spoiler, this is one reason like wars worked different, right? Like think about your whole family gets captured by your enemy. It's rough. So they lose the capital, and then we get some interesting character drama here, and that's what this picture's of. This is Tsunemasa returns Seizan to the abbot. So we get some, we'll say, exemplary characters. So this is like kind of a cute story, 717. Tsunemasa is one of the Heike, but before he leaves, he wants to return a gift from a monk that basically gave him an instrument. It's a kind of a bad picture, but the monk gives him an instrument, and they write poetry to each other, and they're sad. I'll give you some examples. You who go your way with such lingering regret, in your memory you leave behind a token that I shall keep wrapped with care. That's the monk saying, yes, I'll keep it. This is a famous biwa that he was given as a loner. And he also says, the water that flows hither through the bamboo pipe never is the same. But oh, how I wish that change would leave me always with you. So, sadness, right? Not all of the Heike are bad people, but generally speaking, yeah, they run away and they get treated bad. But the exceptions are always interesting, and in this book they tend to always be decent Buddhist exceptions. Why? They have a set of morals that's not just power. That's why. You could just say, oh, it's a Buddhist propaganda, or having morals matters. One of the two. Also, the seizan, the instrument he gives back, gets its own chapter. If you're curious, it's actually from China. So a musical instrument, it has a name and has its own personality. And 19 is the Heike flight from the capital. So the Heike just run. And then the next one, this one's a little more distinctive, so I just chose to do this one instead. I thought it was more interesting. Oh, here we go. No, we don't have a picture for this. This is the new Old Capital. Fukuhara was the place where they tried to move the imperial capital for a couple of years. This one, you get to see kind of the exhortation of what they say to the retainers. Basically, they have to admit, we know we're losing, and we know we don't have our families with us, but we still have to fight, even if we know we're going to lose. So they're trying to get the retainers rallied up, basically. And the speeches in this one are very interesting to see. And, of course, in the last moment, here I'll give you a sample of this. This is 402. This house, once rich in the stored benefit of good deeds, has none left. Occurred evil now casts its shadow over us and blights our lives. Therefore the gods have abandoned us. So too the cloistered emperor. Now that we have left the imperial city to wander the world, where is our refuge? And yet to seek shelter with a stranger under the same tree confirms a bond from past lives. To drink with another from the same stream likewise reveals the tie of earlier births. Consider then all of you that yours is no passing difference to this house, but that generation after generation you have been our retainers. Some among you are close relatives, hence indissolubly bound to us. Others are beholden to us for liberal favor over the generations. Then, when we prospered, you lived off our bounty. Now, how could you fail to requite the debt you owe? Besides, our most noble and sovereign lord is with us, bearing the three regalia. Will you not now follow him into any wilderness, even if it be so remote? And so he spoke, and the old and young wept. And he, by the way, is Lord Munemori, who is now the leader because Kiamori's dead. Whoo! All right. So it is 6:14. We've got book 8. We're going 8 to 11 today, and we'll get there. I only have a couple. We're doing the fast version. So we're doing a couple battles, and we're doing the final battle, and then we'll do some reflections. But it's been about an hour. So that means it's the perfect time for a break. So I need something to drink. So we're going to take let's say 10-minute break. So we'll be back at 6:25, and we'll finish it off, and then we'll finish off the Tale of Heike, and we'll spend at least 10 minutes doing some methodology. So my reflections on how I'd use the Buddhist aspect and what you should think about, and then also how could Mencius be helpful, especially if you didn't read him yet, but if you did, too, I'll give you some good examples of kind of... Mencius is actually easier than Confucius, so I'm kind of sad we didn't get to him earlier, but I'll bring up some of those examples, and it ties back into the Buddhism, too. You'll see once we do it. So besides that, I'll take a 10-minute break, take a pee, get some water, whatever. Yep, and we'll be right back. All right, see you all in about 10 minutes.